Now let's get to our first conversation this afternoon now. Further consolidating their breakaway from the regional economic bloc earlier in the year, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger have slammed the 0.5% levy on imported goods, a decision that is expected to impact negatively on the already low intra-regional trade and weaken the economic community of West African states, ECOWAS. The move, experts say, is also a blow to the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which has seen a sluggish implementation a decade after it was adopted. With intra-continental trade still very low and hovering at 14%, trade experts are worried that the hasty decision by the Sahel states would have thrown a spanner into the intergovernmental efforts embarked upon to address the tariff barriers. Even if the saddening events do not reflect the intra-West Africa trade volume in absolute terms, the region may lose the traction of trade formalization, which saw Nigeria increasing its documented trade with some of the countries by 100-fold last year. Well, let's talk to Dr. Bamidele Ayemibo, lead consultant and CEO, 3T Impex Consulting Limited. He joins me here in Lagos. Dr. Ayemibo, thank you so much for joining the program. It's good to have you today.
Thank you very much for having me. How are you today?
Well, very well. And we see the issues just like I mentioned to you. What first do you make of this move by these Sahel states, at this time where we are talking about the expected positives of the AFCFTA?
Obviously, it's a bad omen, it's a bad sign. It's tearing apart the unity we expected on the African continent. It's not a good optics, actually. It's sad, actually, because, they already pull out of ECOWAS, now imposing tariff, even though it's 0.5% levy, but it's still, for me, it's just a sign, a signal that, look, we don't want to be a part of you guys again, and if you guys must trade with us, we're going to give you additional fee. So, it's a bad sign, actually, and it's not good for AFCFTA, it's not good for ETLS, it's not good for ECOWAS.
But now that this has happened, what will be the implication of this if we are to break it down?
Okay, no, I don't see a lot. I like to work a lot with data. Different people might have different views, but for me, when I look at the three economy, if you look at it, Tolu, it has not really done well for them because, they do a number of trade also with Africa. I was checking some data when you informed me about this meeting, and I realized that they've had in the last 2 years, since they started and now, their import has not largely changed, but the export has significantly changed, about $3 billion down from about 22 to 2018. The population of these three countries just about 70, and the combined GDP just about 80 billion. So I really do not see, I feel, in my opinion, this will affect them more than it will affect Africa, because in ECOWAS, we have about 15 countries. Now they are down to 12 because of these three pulling out. I don't see serious impact. Let's look at some of the data of their import, actually. 30% of the import is from Africa. 30% from Africa. That's Burkina Faso. About 30% from Africa. Mali, about 30% from Africa. Niger, about 25% from Africa. When I mean Africa now, I mean Africa plus ECOWAS. Now, and I think this is the reason they are imposing this tariff on Africa, because of the volume coming to them. But at the end of the day, what is important for West Africa is for us to look for other markets to be able to sell, if this will impact. But like I said, it's 0.5%. It might not have a significant impact. For me, it was just a sign rather than a serious economic impact, the way I see it, because it's not very significant. But the fact that they even did it is a sign that, look, we don't want to be part of you guys again. And as a sign that we don't want to be part of you, we are imposing some levy on the product that come into our country from your place.
These are some of the same countries that are even owing us. Some of these African countries are owing Nigeria electricity bills. I reported that sometime last week, supply of electricity and all of that. So really, when you look at this and the entire focus of the AFCFTA, I seem to be worried that, are you sure that we are not having a bit of a shortcoming or a bit of challenge in actualizing the thrust, the aim, the focus of this AFCFTA? You know, every time I have you on the program, I like to bring up what has happened with AGOA. Nigeria did not benefit, or Africa generally did not really benefit from that market. And I think AGOA is still functional even at the moment. How well are we thriving? And now AFCFTA is here. Africa is also losing out one way or the other. We're becoming enemies of each other. Why is this happening?
Okay, so they need, you know, it's not, I don't think it's a good strategy for any country in today's world to isolate itself.
Yeah.
It's not a good, in fact, isolating yourself, you must have something that you must have something going on for you. Because even though they pull out of Africa, their alliance with China, alliance with Russia is the West they don't want to associate with, but they have an alliance with China and Russia because they need them. I mean, I saw a news about 2 weeks ago, the fact that they needed petrol because the country was grounded to a halt because of an issue the government of Nigeria had with Chinese. Yes. And they had to beg Nigeria. Their Minister of Petroleum went to Aso Rock to solicit support to be able to, and we have to do Big Brother, even though they've misbehaved to us in the past. We have to allow about 300 trucks ahead. We're allowing to the country to be able to help them relieve the stress and the challenge the country was facing, which shows that we are still, in spite of the way they've even acted towards us because of the issue, what we did when they wanted to pull out of ECOWAS, we still do like a big brother, and of course with good neighbor, which I think make a lot of sense, which to me is a sign that you really cannot isolate yourself. The whole essence of AFCFTA is to ensure that we are able to grow this economy together as African. EU, with a population of just about 500 million people, if you remove what's the name, UK from it, less than 500 million, they are controlling 1/3 of global trade, out of about a global trade of about 24 trillion trade in goods, about 8 trillion with EU alone. But guess what? 70% of that trade is intra-EU trade. And that's the whole idea of AFCFTA. With 40% intra-African trade, the idea is to grow it, because with intra-African trade growing, we can increase employment, we can reduce inequality, we can reduce poverty on the African continent. So them pulling out of it is not a good thing. You talk about AGOA. The same problem we're having with AGOA, you know, this problem of AGOA or ETLS is still the same issue. AGOA and Africa could not benefit a lot from it, not because of what is happening right now, but because Africa in itself needs to do a lot as to growing non-oil export in general. We do a lot of export, we do a lot of commodity export, and it's not helping Africa to generate enough income because the commodities are not well priced. You saw the prices you were mentioning for all the metals. We do a lot of those metal exports, but go and check what they use those metals to produce. And then you'll be able to know who is making money from international trade. When you look at the global trade in general, intermediate products, finished goods, constitute more than 70% of demand in the world, particularly intermediate products, which contribute about 50% of demand in the world. Commodity, from agri to minerals, the people exporting them are not making the best of the money they are making. They are not making the best of the value of those minerals, of those commodities, because the people adding value are the people getting the best from them.
In another report I saw, Nigeria has witnessed a major shift in trade dynamics because Africa emerged the country's largest export destination in 2024. That's also according to another report. I'm sure you must have seen that report too, a data released by NBS, which highlights trade surplus driven by robust exports to African continents and key global markets. How would you also react to this?
The fact that Dangote is up is contributing to that. And the fact that we are now exporting. I mean, look at what happened last year. There was NEPC announced about 20% increase in non-oil exports. But do you know that two major commodities contributed to that? Petrochemical, fertilizer, and then cocoa. Fertilizer, because of the export of fertilizer by Dangote refinery, in addition to what LMA is doing, another exporter of fertilizer in Nigeria, but more importantly, cocoa. But not that we increased the volume of cocoa we exported. The price of cocoa went over $10,000 last year, over $10,000, from about $3,000, $4,000. That contributed to the export volume. So what Dangote is doing is increasing the export from Nigeria, and of course, the export Nigeria is also doing to African country, contributing to that. So those exports you saw are mainly are within the oil and gas and petrochemical space, not the non-oil export sector. But they are good enough anyway. I mean, whichever way you look at it, it's still good for us to have positive, which is what we want to do anyway, to be able to increase trade with African countries, which is the whole idea under AFCFTA. But if you say something about AFCFTA, it's good we are alive, and you've mentioned some of the things that the president is doing, and it will be good for any of the president, what was the name, to support in this regard. Something is in the AFCFTA export growth in Nigeria. I was at a meeting recently, and they said, last year, I remember we had a session together last year around July when the guided trade initiative was launched.
Yeah.
The guided initiative was launched. Now, that launch, Nigeria has not benefited more. Some of the trade that was supposed to happen from Nigeria to that country, the country did not allow Nigerian products to enter. A good example of this is Cameroon. Nigeria has not gazetted the new tariff plan under AFCFTA that Nigeria has agreed to. I heard this already at the presidency, but this has not been done. I'm hoping that you can amplify this also as the media to be able to get the president's attention, to be able to ensure this is signed. The Cameroonian board are saying, look, your product cannot enter our country duty-free because our own product cannot enter your country duty-free. Why? Because you have not gazetted it. And we have to ask the people, the coordinating office of AFCFTA, and they said they've submitted it to the presidency and they're waiting for presidential assent. And I asked them, when will it be? They said they don't know. They are not working the presidency to be able to know when it will be done. But I feel amplifying this in the media might be able to get the attention of the president, so assent can be given to that document so that we can have this gazetted in Nigeria, and then we can begin to trade under AFCFTA because it's hindering trade for Nigeria under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Interesting stuff. Staying with that report, Africa really did pretty well here. Top 10 destinations for Nigerian exports, Africa, Spain. And Africa did so very well in that report, higher than other countries here. But again, what are the key drivers of this? Moving forward in 2025, what are those enablers? What are those, when I say ease of doing business, what are those initiatives? What are those conversations that we must continue? You've raised one already now, but we need to do more. AFCFTA also has opportunities to export jobs, tech jobs. You know, there are a lot of opportunities, financial services. Are we looking at all of this? Are we taking advantage of this? And if we are, how can we do better?
I think we are looking in that direction. I try to listen to the Minister of Trade, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, most of the time when he's having an interview, and she's very particular about African trade. She's very particular about digital trade. She's very particular about trade within the African continent, which I think is good. What I've not seen is for us to be able to be specific on really what we want to do in Africa. And let me say something, Tolu. Do you know, if you look at the whole of Africa and look at the demand of African countries, Nigeria must be strategic if you're going to get advantage of African trade, because majority of African countries are middle income and low income. Because they are middle income and low income, they have very low disposable income. Because they have low disposable income, many of them are buying what they need for survival. So the product that will thrive in Africa is not going to be commodity, apart from crude oil and gas, apart from the chemical that is already done. What we are going to have to, we need to focus on are the fast-moving consumer goods, from processed agro, drinks, drugs, and things that human beings need, things that people were using and utilizing or buying during COVID. Exactly is what we need to focus on under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. That is what I think we need to begin to focus on. How do we support the manufacturer to be able to ensure they import cheaper and be able to maximize the trade within the African continent? How do we support them to be able, with policies that will help them to be able to maximize the opportunity within the African Continental Free Trade Agreement by increasing? Look at the major challenge. There are two major challenges that we've had. The first one, in the terms of challenges we've had, the first one is payment, and that payment issue has been sorted. But the next one we need to solve right now, is the issue of logistics and movement of goods within the African continent. If for a number of vessels, because of a low level of trade within the African continent, what we get to see most of the time is that we have to move the goods first to Europe before it comes back to Africa. And then even if I'm shipping to Ghana or I'm shipping to Cameroon or I'm shipping to... So we need to do something very serious and very fast. There is this idea of sealing being done by Nexim Bank to enable a trade, vessel moving within West Africa, Central Africa, Southern Africa. That needs to be done. A lot needs to be done to fast track that. That project has been on before COVID. Until now, we have not seen that vessel moving. That is one of the things I think the minister must give priority if we are going to be able to maximize AfCFTA.
Well, again, before I let you go, Nigeria remains a key player in West Africa. We export refined products, cement, manufactured goods, food products, grains, beverages, vegetables, oil to Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. As it is, if we look ahead, what are your projections for the market, considering this development from the Sahel states?
The good news is that even though the news from the Sahel state is a bad news for trade and integration in Africa, but for the traders in Africa, it won't be a major setback yet because the tariff is not very significant, and I'm sure a number of them can deal with it and still be able to continue their trade. The only challenge we have is this might be the beginning of other package of tariff, just the way the Trump is doing in America, to come. And if that eventually becomes the reality in West Africa, like other analysts have said, we might just say bye-bye to trade within West Africa. I hope we'll be able to find alliances within other parts of Africa and be able to solve the problem traders have so that they can find other markets within Africa to be able to sell their goods if there's escalation of tariffs from the Sahel state beyond the 0.5% that we currently have from the news that is coming out of the Sahel state.
Brilliant conversation as always, Dr. Bamidele Ayemibo, export doctor. Thank you so much for breaking this down, making us understand this. Lead consultant, CEO 3T Impex Consulting Limited. Do enjoy the rest of your day. Have a good one as always.
Thank you very much for having me, and bye-bye.
All right then.